In a world where justice is cold, calculated, and delivered by a cybernetic judge with no eyes, one quiet courier is dragged into a courtroom war she never saw coming. Framed, outnumbered, and alone, her only weapon is the truth. And the strange lawyer who just might be crazier than the system itself. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and show your support with a thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's jump into the story. Rain fell steadily from the sky, tapping lightly on the metal roofs of the spaceport, like a gentle warning no one noticed. The marketplace had long since closed, its usual glow now faded into faint flickers of dying neon signs. Most of the vendors were gone, their stalls locked down and their wares hidden beneath dusty covers. In this quiet after-hours world, a young courier named Lumi walked alone. She was small, green-skinned with soft silver eyes, and her steps were quiet but quick. Her canvas bag, worn thin by long days of deliveries, was filled with music chips and old recordings, nothing illegal, just rare and well-loved items traded among collectors and nostalgic shopkeepers. Lumi had made her last drop-off and was ready to head home, dreaming of tea and the warmth of her bunk in the shelter dorms. The night air was thick with mist and the distant hum of drones. She rounded a corner, her boots splashing slightly in a shallow puddle, when suddenly the calm was shattered. Blinding blue lights exploded around her, and she froze as loud voices yelled commands she barely understood. Several security officers, big, armored, and fast burst from a black hover wagon that looked like a beetle with flashing eyes. "Hands where we can see them," one shouted. Before Lumi could respond, cold hands grabbed her arms and twisted them behind her back. Her canvas bag fell, music chips scattering across the wet ground like dropped coins. One rolled to the edge of a drain and vanished into the dark. Lumi opened her mouth to protest, but her voice vanished in her throat. She was too afraid to speak. They didn't explain anything. She wasn't told why she was being taken, or where. The guards didn't meet her eyes, and she was shoved into the back of the hover wagon, the door slamming shut behind her. Inside, the hum of the engine and the buzz of fear filled the silence. She was still trying to understand what had happened. Was this a mistake? Had someone confused her for someone else? The holding room was cold and smelled like burnt plastic. Lumi sat on a metal bench, her arms now free but sore from the way they had been twisted. Around her were others, some human, some not, each keeping to themselves. No one spoke above a whisper, but she kept hearing the same name over and over again. "Judge Brask," someone muttered. "The Iron Hand." Another said, "Hope, you didn't lie in your report. He can smell a lie from the hallway." A third added, "He's not even human anymore. Just wires and punishment." The longer Lumi sat there, the heavier the fear became. She hadn't even seen this judge yet, but already her stomach twisted. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve as she thought about her grandmother back on her homeworld, who always sighed, "When the sky breaks, find your stillness." But Lumi couldn't find stillness. She didn't understand what was happening, only that she was in danger and alone. She had never been in trouble before, not real trouble. Late fees, missed. Delivery deadlines, yes. But this felt like something from a warning poster. Then finally, the heavy door creaked open, and a quiet voice called her name. Two guards escorted her down a narrow corridor lit by dull yellow lights that flickered as they passed. Her feet dragged. She wanted to run, but where would she go? They led her into a courtroom, though it looked nothing like what she imagined a courtroom would look like. It was wide, circular, and metallic. In the center stood a massive chair raised high above the floor, cables dangling from the ceiling like vines made of steel. The walls hummed faintly, as if the whole room was waiting to speak. Her eyes scanned the space and found a figure waiting at the table. Beside the defense stand, a rounded globe hovered above the ground, filled with softly glowing fluid, and inside floated a strange creature with metal arms folded calmly. "You must be Lumi," it said gently. "I'm Merton Coyle, your advocate." Lumi gave a shaky nod and sat down beside him. His mechanical claws made soft tapping sounds as they moved papers on his display. "They'll try to shake you. Say nothing, no matter what." "I'll speak for you," he told her. Across the room, at the opposite table, sat two men she recognized immediately, Detectives Drawn and Kelso. They were the ones who had arrested her. Drawn gave her a slow, smug grin, like someone who'd already won a game. Kelso winked. Lumi looked away quickly. She didn't want to remember the night they found her outside the cafe, how they pushed her face down into the gravel and called her name she didn't understand. She was about to whisper something to Merton when another door slammed open. A loud, clanking sound filled the room. A man in a long robe shuffled backward into the room, dragging a thick cable behind him. Lumi's breath caught. The man was Judge Brask. He was tall, but not because of height, because of the way he carried himself, like he'd seen 1,000 lies before breakfast. His arms were entirely metal, and his bald head was covered in metal plates and wires. He pulled the cable into his seat and settled in without a word, then finally looked up. His eyes were gone. In their place were twin glass lenses that whirred softly as they focused on Lumi. "Oh," he muttered. "This is going to be fun." She didn't know why he said it like that, but she knew one thing for sure. Whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to be easy. The prosecutor rose from his chair as the courtroom quieted, his long coat settling around polished boots that clicked when he turned. His name was Marek, and every motion he made was sharp, as if he had been wound too tightly. Clearing his throat, he lifted a tablet, its glass surface glowing with lists and graphs that looked official, even dangerous. Lumi felt her heart thump hard in her chest. She wished she could look away, but Marek's voice pinned her in place. He spoke formally, but there was a thrill behind each syllable, like someone telling a ghost story by firelight. He announced that Lumi was not a simple courier at all. According to him, she was a smuggler, a weapons maker, and a threat to every citizen of the colony. He described unlicensed plasma devices he said she hid in her bag, and forged access codes that could unlock any port gate. Each new claim felt heavier than the last, stacking against her like crates about to topple. Detective Drawn was called first. He stood with a swagger, only he seemed to admire, smoothing the front of his uniform, while sending Lumi a smile that had no kindness in it. He said he had watched Lumi for weeks, following her careful steps through back alleys, noting secret meetings with dangerous types. Kelso followed, adding that she had boasted of underground fights, bragged about biting a man who tried to stop her. He even held up a picture of a bruised human arm. The room gasped. Lumi's stomach clenched, remembering that night outside the cafe. She had bitten Kelso because he slammed her head against the wall, but Marek told it so differently that even she started to doubt her memory. Each time Drawn or Kelso spoke, their eyes held the same smug shine, feeding Marek's tale as if they had rehearsed it. Merton Coyle stayed silent beside her, the soft lights inside his globe shifting from calm blue to watchful amber. Now and then, one metal claw tapped the table, counting beats only he understood. Lumi glanced at him, but said nothing. She remembered his warning. Stay silent until it is your turn, for every word before that would be used against you. Even so, her legs shook under the table. She gripped her knees to stop it, but the trembling only moved to her hands. Marek showed footage on a large screen. It displayed Lumi walking through a crowded market, her bag over one shoulder. The video paused at a frame where her hand dipped inside the bag, then zoomed dramatically. "Here," Marek said. The accused reaches for a burner, a throwaway plasma device meant for quick crime and quick escape. Lumi stared. She knew exactly what she was retrieving, an old music chip she had promised to deliver. Yet the angle was poor, her intent hidden. The crowd murmured. She felt their doubt spreading like frost across her small hope. Judge Brask listened without interruption, hands folded, the cable running from his robe, twitching now and then like a tail. His glass lenses whirred each time Marek presented new evidence, but his face never changed. Only at rare moments did the smallest spark of interest flare behind those lenses, quickly extinguished. Lumi tried to read him, and gave up. His expression was metal, and no comfort at all. That Marek moved on to school records and travel logs, he said the police uncovered. He claimed Lumi had forged documents to hide a violent past on her homeworld. The lies piled so high Lumi almost lost herself under them. She clenched her teeth but kept silent. Each sentence Marek delivered felt like another bolt locking shut a door behind her. She pictured that door labeled with her name, sealing any chance of returning to a normal life. When Marek finished, he asked permission to approach the judge. Brask nodded once. Marek handed up a slim data rod, saying it held further proof. Intercepted messages about weapons deals, codes, secret plans. Brask turned the rod in his mechanical fingers, as if it were a dull toy. He did not plug it into anything, did not even scan it, merely set it near the edge of his platform. Marek's lips tightened, but he thanked the court and returned to his table. Dran and Kelso sat in practiced stillness, but their knees pointed outward, showing pride in a job they thought complete. There was a pause, thick and unmoving. Lumi's ears rang in the quiet chamber. Judge Brask finally leaned forward. The servos in his shoulders creaked. "Defense," he said, voice like two stones grinding. "Your reply will follow, but first I need clarity." His lenses focused on Marek. The witness reports mention a burner. Explain the term. Counselor, for the record. Marek blinked, surprised. A burner, Your Honor, is an unregistered weapon, a handheld plasma tool designed for quick violent use and quick disposal. Brask tapped one metal finger on his armrest. Interesting. He turned his blank gaze toward Lumi, lingered a beat, then faced Merton Coyle. "I will allow a short recess. When we return, the defense will address these claims." The gavel struck. The sound was not loud, but it sliced through Lumi like cold wire. Guards led Lumi and Merton to a side room. The door closed behind them. Merton's claws spun in a quiet circle, selecting files only he could see. "They built a wall of noise," he said in a low hum. "Now we show where the bricks don't fit." Lumi swallowed hard. "Can you?" The globe flickered soft blue again. "Truth leaves fingerprints, even under paint," he replied. "I will point them out." A guard knocked, telling them time was nearly up. Lumi rubbed her wrists where the cuffs had been. The hallway felt longer on the way back, every step echoing doom. Yet when they re-entered the courtroom, she noticed something new. The public gallery, once cold, now held eyes that seemed unsure. Doubt had begun to bloom. It was small, fragile, but alive. Lumi breathed in, then out. The storm still roared. Over her head, but somewhere behind those clouds, she sensed a break. A space where light might shine, if Merton could guide it through. The courtroom was quiet as the defense began. All eyes turned toward the smooth, floating globe that housed Merton Coyle, Lumi's strange but calm lawyer. He drifted forward slowly, projecting a soft blue light across the chamber floor. "Judge." Brask leaned back in his massive chair, his metal fingers tapping the edge of the armrest. The silence stretched just long enough to feel uncomfortable, before Merton's voice filled the space. It was steady, gentle, but somehow carried power. "Your Honor," he began, "what we've heard today is a story. Well-crafted, loud, and dramatic. But a story is not the same as the truth." Merton waved one claw and brought up a display that hovered in the air, showing a log of purchase transactions. Dozens of items were listed: music chips, collector, recordings, and rare archives. Each entry was marked with time, location, and full payment details. "These are the items Lumi was carrying," Merton said. "Every single one bought legally, with receipts verified by licensed distributors." He highlighted lines in the data. "There is no piracy here. No stolen content. Only old music and honest work." Judge Brask gave no visible reaction, but Lumi could see a tiny twitch in the corner of his mouth. Maybe interest, maybe nothing. Merton continued, pulling up a second screen. This one showed a time-stamped video taken from the spaceport security system. In it, Lumi could be seen leaving a vendor stall, exchanging words with the seller, then walking calmly toward the street. Less than 10 minutes later, officers swarmed and arrested her. "This footage directly challenges the detective's timeline," Merton said. "They claim to have watched her for hours. This shows no such thing." The gallery shifted. In their seats, some glanced at each other, eyebrows raised. A few leaned forward. The tension in the room thickened like morning fog. Then came the turning point. Merton played an audio recording. The quality was rough, voices scratchy, but clear enough. Drones. Voice came first, laughing. "Just pin something on her," he said. "Doesn't matter what. She's small, weird, and quiet. No one will fight for her." Then Kelso. "It'll get our count up for the month. Quota's a quota." The courtroom gasped. Even some of the guards turned to look at the detectives. Drown's face turned pale. Kelso stiffened, but said nothing. Judge Brask straightened in his chair. The quiet sound of wires moving under his robes could be heard as he leaned forward. "Detectives," he said, his voice like ice sliding down metal. "Do you dispute this recording?" Neither man spoke. The judge nodded slowly. "Very well. Silence can be honest, too." Lumi's breath shook in her chest. It felt like someone had punched a hole in the storm cloud above her. Light was starting to come through. She looked at Merton, whose soft glow had turned a warmer shade of green. He was calm but watchful, like a pilot guiding a ship through. Narrow Skies. Marek, the prosecutor, stood quickly and tried to speak. He claimed the audio was taken out of context, said it wasn't proof of anything. But Merton brought up a third file, an internal message from the Port Authority that had been sent to Marek's office days before the arrest. It clearly stated that all of Lumi's purchases were legal. Marek had received it, read it, and done. Nothing. The message glowed at the center of the room like a warning light. Brask turned toward Marek. "You had this information," he said. It wasn't a question. Marek's face twitched. "I didn't believe it was relevant at the time." Brask's lenses narrowed. "You didn't believe it," he repeated. "Not that it wasn't true. You just decided it didn't matter." The gavel didn't fall, but the sound of it echoed in everyone's head anyway. Merton glided back beside Lumi. "I told you," he whispered softly enough for only her to hear. "The truth leaves fingerprints. All we had to do was dust the surface." Lumi didn't speak. Her mouth was too dry, her heart too full. She had spent the last day feeling smaller and smaller, like a light fading in a sealed room. But now, she felt like she might not disappear after all. Judge Brask sat still for a long moment. Then he slowly rose, cables dragging behind him like a cloak. He looked over the room, his lenses flashing faintly. "The court will now consider what it has seen and heard," he said. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of something final. "But let me be clear, truth matters here. Not stories, not showmanship. Truth. We will continue shortly. As the judge left the bench, the courtroom remained silent. The storm had not yet ended, but its winds were shifting. People weren't whispering anymore. They were watching closely, as if something real had finally broken through the noise. Lumi sat quietly, the pressure in her chest easing slightly. She wasn't safe yet, but she wasn't alone. Not anymore. The morning light crept in through the high windows of the courtroom, casting long lines of gold across the floor. The storm outside had passed, but inside, the air still felt heavy. Everyone waited in silence. Lumi sat with her hands folded in her lap, her back straight, trying not to shake. Merton Coyle floated calmly beside her, his glass globe silent but steady, glowing with a cool light that made her feel like she could still breathe. Across the room, the prosecutor Marek stood stiff and pale, his eyes fixed on the judge's empty chair. The two detectives, Drawn and Kelso, sat behind him, no longer wearing the smug smiles they'd shown at the start. Now, their expressions were tight and still, as if they were holding their breath along with everyone else. Then, a sound slow. Sharp footsteps, followed by the soft scrape of metal on stone. Judge Brask returned, dragging his cable behind him. He moved like someone who had already made up his mind. The room stood as he entered, and when he sat, everyone followed. The judge leaned back in his chair and took a moment before speaking. His metal fingers tapped once on the armrest. The lenses where his eyes should have been slowly scanned the room before settling on Lumi. "Miss Lumi," he began, his voice low and steady, "you have been accused of serious crimes. You were painted as a threat, a lawbreaker, and a danger to this colony." The judge paused, then leaned forward slightly. "But accusations are not proof. Stories are not facts. And fear is not guilt." He turned toward Marek, who shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. "This court has reviewed the evidence presented by the prosecution and the defense," Brask continued. "It is clear that the arrest was made without proper cause. Evidence was altered, timelines do not match, and there are strong signs of personal bias by the arresting officers." He glanced at Drawn and Kelso, who avoided his gaze. "Therefore," Brask said firmly, "all charges against Lumi are dropped, effective immediately. She is free to go." There was a moment of silence, brief, but so complete that Lumi thought time had frozen. Then, a low ripple of gasps and quiet sighs moved through the room like a breeze. Lumi's chest rose and fell as if she had been underwater and finally found air. Her hands shook as she looked at Merton, whose globe pulsed with a soft, proud green. Judge Brask wasn't finished. He turned toward the prosecutor. "Marek," he said, his voice harder now, "you ignored key information. You pushed a case built on unreliable reports and let your personal opinion guide your actions." Marek opened his mouth, but Brask cut him off. "Save it. You are suspended, effective immediately. An inquiry will follow." Marek's face turned pale, and he slowly sat down, eyes wide, lips pressed together. The judge's attention moved next to the detectives. "As for you two," he said, his lenses glowing faintly, "your behavior is not just a stain on your department. It is dangerous. Abusing your authority to meet a quota and targeting someone because she looked easy to frame is not justice. It is cowardice." He gestured to the guards near the wall. "Detectives Drawn and Kelso are to be held for questioning. They are not to leave the colony until the investigation is complete." Two officers stepped forward. Drawn stood suddenly, but the guards moved quickly, placing a firm hand on each of his shoulders. Kelso didn't move at all. Handcuffs clicked, and the sound echoed sharply through the courtroom. Lumi watched as the two men were led away. Part of her wanted to cheer, but another part simply felt tired. She had been afraid for so long that relief was almost unfamiliar. Brask leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "Let this serve as a reminder," he said, addressing the entire courtroom now. "Justice is not about winning or losing. It is about finding the truth, no matter how long it takes or how uncomfortable it makes us." He turned to Lumi once more, and for the first time, his metal face softened. "You are brave," he said. "More than you know." From a small slot in his chair, he slid out a tiny silver disc and handed it to one of the aides, who brought it over to Lumi. "This is a merchant's license," he said, "fully registered. It will allow you to work without fear of seizure or arrest. Consider it a gift from a court that failed to protect you the first time." Lumi took the disc with shaking hands. Her voice barely worked, but she managed to whisper, "Thank you." The judge nodded once. "Go build something good." As Lumi and Merton left the courtroom, the first full beam of sunlight broke through the windows and bathed the floor in light. People in the gallery stood and stepped aside to let her pass. Some nodded, others clapped softly. Outside, the street had dried after the night's rain, and the air felt fresher than it had in days. Lumi held the disc tightly in her palm, the cool metal grounding her. Later, word of her trial spread through the colony. Small vendors and travelers talked about the case that changed everything. Within a few weeks, new policies were introduced protecting independent workers like Lumi. She had become without, meaning to a symbol of what could happen when one voice refused to be silenced. She didn't seek fame. She only wanted her life back. But in the end, she gave others something more -hope. And every time she opened her small market booth and played music through old speakers, people came. Not just for the tunes, but for the reminder that truth, even when buried, can still find a way to shine.